It's January 2024 and a group of fans from the world's oldest Manchester United supporters club, based 2,000 miles away in Malta, is at Old Trafford. They're here to begin celebrations for their 65th anniversary. For one of these fans, this is a unique trip down memory lane. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of our exclusive 4-part series featuring the famous Joe Glanville, former president of the world's oldest Manchester United supporters club. Today we're here at Hotel Football overlooking Old Trafford, and Joe's going to be sharing some of his memories of the history here at the Theatre of Dreams. Joe, tell us your feelings when you first saw this magnificent stadium.
The first thing that impressed me wasn't the Man United Stadium. What impressed me as soon as I arrived in Manchester the first time, that everywhere was black. Everywhere suit. All the buildings, black. And when Joe Pullen picked me up, he told me, let's go home. And on the way, I told him, you're taking me to Old Trafford, for the simple reason that I saw the 2 big chimneys, which were behind what today is the Sir Alex Ferguson stand. And I was right, because it was very near to Easter, where everywhere were closed, so he could easily approach Old Trafford, and he showed me the ground from outside at that time, you know. That was my first impression of Man United football ground.
You've got a few years on me, Joe, but I remember when I first came to the first matches, probably around the same sort of time when you first came to Old Trafford, and I was only about 5 or 6 years old, and as a young child you got passed to the front where there was a little picket fence. I was wondering, what was your first memory of Old Trafford, and do you remember what it was like?
It was a totally different setup to what it is today. There were barely no stands. There was the Stratford end, which was already popular, but then there was the Manchester end, with nothing except the scoreboard, where the scores used to come up bit by bit, no electronical thing, you know. The south stand was there, and then on the other side, it was a stand which was not any cantilevers or joining. It was a stand on its own. People used to stand up, a lot of atmosphere, something that it's a pity that these days the standing sections, they are not allowed. Although now at Old Trafford they are beginning to change a bit by making certain areas where people could stand up, you know. But it was totally different at that time.
The stadium has certainly changed over the years, but I'm wondering, Joseph, do you remember the actual first game that you came here?
Yes, the first game was in 1967. It was against Fulham. And I was lucky enough that Miss Busby gave me a ticket in the director's box. So consequently, after the game, I was in the director's lounge. And what I remember that day, I met Mark, a person whom we used to nickname him the Teddy Boy at that time, because the type of his hair. And he had joined Fulham, and he told me, when you leave here, there's only one way to go, down. That remained in my head.
The atmosphere was so different in those days. What I remember is people with rattles.
Yes.
How would you compare the atmosphere then to what it's like now?
I would prefer the atmosphere at that time. There was more what I call banter, that people joined each other, and a lot of support. There were no sandwich supporters, everybody together. People used to get some food from home, because a lot of the people, even over here, did not have a lot of money at that time. It was totally different. I mean, even the mentality of the people at that time as regards football was more closely knit than the way we see it today, because of the commercial aspect of the sport that is today. That changed a lot the setup of football and the way people see it.
You guys are very dedicated coming over from Malta, 2,000 miles for a home match, win, lose or draw. But in those days, it was a completely different atmosphere because, as Busby used to say, it was your responsibility of the team to entertain these guys who've been working in the factories hard all week. So the atmosphere would have been quite different from that point of view, wouldn't it?
Yes, yes, definitely. In fact, even when I used to come and you say to people, I've been to that particular game, oh, have you been there? Have you been there? Today, with the way we live, that people coming from every part of the world, flights and everything, it has not become what I call special. At that time to say that you've been to Old Trafford, oh my God. In fact, when I came here the first time from Malta, it was something really special. And my visit was covered by all the papers in Malta because I came over and met the stars at that time, you know.
What's really wonderful is the reception that you guys got when you came over. I know in previous films we've talked to John Gubba, who talked about how he was treated like very much a VIP from the day that he arrived. And the football club's grown beyond all recognition, but what strikes me in those days, you were very much part of a close-knit family. And tell us about the people that you would have first known when you first came here, behind the scenes.
The first person I met at Old Trafford was a woman that today is quite well known in the Manchester United circus, Kath. I was lucky enough to meet Kath the first day that she joined the club. I came over for the Estudiantes game, and when I was here, it was her first day of work at Old Trafford. So I've been very, very close to Kath, a great friend of mine, which sometimes when you think how long it's been, over 55 years, it's something special to keep a friendship going for 55 years and over. She's a very, very, as I said, she's a very good friend of mine. She likes our island a lot. And since then, she has been coming to my house on holiday nearly every year. And even now, when I see her, the first thing she tells me, when am I coming to Malta? How is the weather there? What's the temperature, you know? In fact, just last week when I phoned her, that was the same question. How is the weather over there? So, and then besides Kath, there was Les Olive, and later on after Les Olive retired, there was Ken Merritt, who before was the assistant secretary, you know. But I used to come and go everywhere. Because of Jack Crompton, I used to have a sort of a free hand where I enter, you know. And I would finish at the laundry room with the ladies, having coffee there. When at that time there was even the mother of a popular person over here, who was even involved in the administration side, which was Ken Ramsden. And when I used to go to the laundry room, all the walls were covered with photos of different aspects of the club, players and whatnot. And the lady used to give me these photos to get copies and take them back to Malta.
We've already filmed at the training ground, the Cliff, but I think it's worth mentioning back in those days, the players used to train on the pitch here, didn't they?
Yes, especially a day or two before the actual game, you know. They did not do very heavy training. It was light training, which was accepted, you know, so that they avert any injuries. And on the other side, if there was somebody who was not 100% fit at that time, it was his last chance to prove himself whether he will be selected or not.
So not only in those days did they train out on the pitch, but I think when Jimmy Murphy and Matt Busby's time, they were training around the back of the Stretford end. Do you remember those days?
Even they sometimes Jimmy Murphy used to take them at the back instead of going to the Cliff. And that's one reason why the statue was positioned there, because that was his area. I remember a time when Jack Crompton used to tell me that when the club was in dire straits financially, he used to ask one of the players to go around the corner and get a jar of coffee so that they could do coffee for the players. Can you imagine now if you ask the players to go and get some coffee from around the corner, you know? It's amazing.
The apprenticeship in those days was so different, wasn't it? The young players used to clean the first team players' boots and that kind of thing, didn't they?
Yes, and in fact that went on till when Bex was around, Bex and Giggsy, because they used to tell me they've been in the boot room in Carrington cleaning the boots, And sometimes they were even asked to clean the cars of the players. Today it's not possible because it's not even allowed by the football authority, you know, which I think is daft. Because that was part of the education when players were young, you know.
Part of the character building. You're a very likeable guy, Joseph, but I think you've also got this extra ace in your pack because you've got to know people like David Beckham and the class of '92 because you've always had this added draw bit, I'll take them over to Malta and give them a good time.
I really got close to them because I was very, very close to Eric Harrison. And they used to be afraid of Eric Harrison. Even at the cliff, when Eric used to stay looking at them while they are training, when he begins to bang his hand against the window, that means Eric is going to be down here and he's going to give us a rollicking, you know. So I was very close to them, all of them, Giggsy. The first time that I was introduced to Giggsy, in fact, I was introduced as Ryan Wilson. And you could see that he's going to be something special, you know. And the other lot, they all joined together because all of them, Scholes, the Neville brothers, Becks, they used to gang together. And even while they were training, they used to stay after, and they had a little pitch at the cliff, and they used to stay shooting, but they were very, very dedicated. And that was part of the education that Eric Harrison tried to build in there.
Fascinating. It really strikes me listening to you speak, Joseph, about how it used to be in those days, how in many ways it's a lot more difficult for the managers these days because they can't be as strict like we all know about Fergie's hairdryer, and you talked about Eric Harrison being strict, and we all know Jimmy Murphy was very strict. So we don't seem to have that sort of relationship with players these days because they're all big stars in their own right already.
I think this came about with the introduction of agents. The aspect of a footballer's career since the agents came about is totally different. And sometimes it's a question whether you accept that the introduction of agent was a good thing or whether it was a bad thing. In a lot of aspects, it's a good thing because they gave the rights to players, because I used to remember players here who finished nothing. I think, in fact, I was one time in Piccadilly, and I met a bloke who used to play for United, a very good prospect, by the name of Bobby Noble. Unfortunately, he was playing against Sunderland. He got a knock on his head during the game, and he finished. And when I met him in Piccadilly, he did not even have a penny in his pocket. And I took him and bought him a coffee. So in a way, the aspects of having an agent is of a great example. But then, on the negative side, sometimes the advice that they are given, its only concerns to them is the money.
Exactly.
It's not what's good and bad, and what the future holds for the particular player. It's the increase in wage, and consequently, what the agent is going to gain out of the deal.
Mm. It's very interesting what you say about agents, because I remember filming the very first interview with Ryan Giggs when he got a sponsorship with Reebok, and I'm pretty certain that Alex Ferguson did the deal for Ryan Giggs because he didn't have an agent. Do you remember when agents first started appearing around the players here at Old Trafford?
Yes, of course. I mean, that was, if I remember well, one of the first players I remembering now to have an agent was Dennis Lom. In fact, the bloke used to come from Huddersfield, and his second name was Stanley. But that was the first agent that I knew. I think the best agent that any United player had were the Neville's brother. Do you know why?
Tell me.
Because the agent was their father. So he looked after them, not just thinking financially. He looked after them, what the future holds for them in the professional game. And I can say now that initially, when they used to get the wages, Neville used to hold the money for them. He used to give them a certain sum of money every week to spend. But that was proper education.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest frustrations of fans these days. They feel that some of our star players, past and present, sometimes get led down the wrong direction by agents, and it's fantastic to hear about somebody like Neville looking after, because they were all Man United fans, and that's kind of a big difference these days, isn't it? Because we don't get as many United fans possibly playing for the team.
And even in the particular person just mentioned, Neville, he was involved with Barry for a long time, so he knew the setup of football and what's wrong and what's right. In fact, not just him, even his wife, and I think there was a time her mother used to work at Barry.
So lots of things have changed around Old Trafford, but let's go back to the stadium, and you watched the games from many different places. Tell us about the different parts of the ground. I think you've even been up in the TV gantry.
I mean, I've been in every part of the ground, from the Stratford end, the Manchester end, everywhere, you know. But through the friendship I had with Les Olive, and after with Ken Merritt, I used to be a lot of time in the director's box, which was something special. I mean, and Ken Merritt used to tell me, Joe, if I have extra tickets, you're in. He told me, but don't be annoyed if there come a time when I can't help you. But most of the time I used to be there. But then when I used to live in Manchester for a while, I began missing the director's box and going to gantry, which is the best place, the best seat you can get at Old Trafford. It's where, if people don't know what the gantry means, it's up high up on the stands where there used to be the television cameras. And it was a great time. You used to go up on a ladder, up there. So while you are up there, you've got no option to move anywhere as soon as the game begins, because the ladder was taken away. So consequently, you ask, what does happen if you wanted to go, or you had the need to go to the room? And our only option was to go up on the roof of the stand. So can you imagine, in January, in that cold weather, up on the stand, trying in the proper way to pee up there. But what used to save us up there, which was a necessity, it was a good bottle of whiskey, which was consumed quite a lot. But that was the only option to have, because it was really cold up there, you know. But as regards the best place in the ground, for me, that was the gantry.
You get a fantastic view from up there. You see the way the play develops. But on a more intimate note, I think you've even sat on the bench, haven't you?
Oh, yes. I mean, again, through Jack Crompton, I used to go to a lot of, at that time, Central League games, which were the reserves playing, you know. And Jack used to be the coach of the reserve team. So he used to take me with him. And I was in the dressing room preparing everything, you know, bandages, I mean, and whatnot. So I was next to him on the bench, watching the games. But I've been also on the bench on some particular first team games. But most of it was for reserve team games, and then with Eric Harrison for youth team games. But a lot of trouble with the youngsters and the reserve team players.
I think the viewers will find it fascinating that you've had your finger on the pulse at every single possible level of the football club, the fans, the players, the behind the scenes people, the managers. Tell us about the times when you've actually travelled with the team on the team bus.
On the team bus, we were playing in Hillsborough, Sheffield. And Hillsborough at that time was not the best ground for us to go, because for us it was bad luck. We lost, I think we lost 3 or 4 semi-finals of the cup. But still, we went over there, and there was such a big crowd that I remember the coach trying to go to the ground. It had to go on the pavement. to go and pass the crowd. And George was having a great game, fantastic game. And the only thing that was possible to keep George was to kick him. And in the second half, Jack Crompton had to go on the pitch and not just take him back but pick him up and take him to the dressing room. So by that time, they were having the shower. His ankles swelled and he could not walk. So me and Wilf McGuinness took him from the side and carried him. And while we were trying to get on the coach, you know, there were these girls and shouting their head off, what I call the beastal styles, and because George is passing, you know. There was a bloke with a girl, and he called George a poof.
It's not very nice.
I mean, he had his say, because Wilf McGuinness stand back, and he gave him what at that time we used to call a nice Manchester kiss. a big well on his face, you know. And then we carried him to the coach. I mean, George was fantastic. He never moaned. Even in the dressing room, going out to play a game, he was always with his head bowed while Matt was having the lecture before the game. And he used to go on the pitch as if nothing is happening. I mean, he had this sort of character, very nice and easy. I mean, and it's amazing. No pressure, nothing.
That's probably one of the biggest changes in the game today, isn't it? I think the kids that watch the football today, they don't realise how much protection players have and how hard it was, because not only did they were kicked a lot, but they had heavier boots, heavier balls, and it was a totally different game, wasn't it, really?
If you take on account just the ball itself, to play a game, especially in that wet weather, the ball gets very hard and very heavy. Because at that time, the football, you had what we used to call a bladder, and then you tie it up with this bladder, and you have to lace the ball, and when you head the ball, and you happen to head where the lacing was there, it used to leave a mark, and the ball used to be very heavy. In fact, that's why these days you get a lot of players who suffer with dementia. That's part of the problem that has gone or has been reflected from the years past.
It's worth reminding people really that when Bobby Charlton used to strike the ball, it was literally almost like a cannonball, wasn't it?
I saw some fantastic games over here. But the best two goals I saw from Bobby was the semi-final of the World Cup when England won against Portugal. Two fantastic goals. Both of them from outside the penalty area, but heavy shots, which no goalkeeper, not even the Russian goalkeeper, his name was Russian, he could keep them. Fantastic. He had both, although he was a left footer, he used to shoot from both legs. And Bobby was a very, very professional player, and that's why he used to be my hero. Bobby always used to be my hero. I always say the best player I ever saw was George Best. But as regards professionalism, Bobby was an example to everybody, you know. And if I think I am not wrong, in his whole career, he was only booked twice. And Bobby had a long career.
Absolutely fabulous memories, Joe. We're going to come back after a short break. If you want to know more about the world's oldest Manchester United supporters club, please watch my official film celebrating how this unique relationship all began. And of course, our hero Joe Glanville is well featured. You can stream the film on Vimeo, and there's also a souvenir DVD. You've got some amazing stories, Joseph, and when people ask me who's Joe Glanville, I always tell them, remember when we won the Premier League for the first time, having waited 26 years to be champions of England again, and that great scene of Fergie walking through the crowd, and on his shoulder we've got a young Joe Glanville.
Yes, that was, for me it was a special occasion, not just because we won the Premier League, because what immediately followed after. Because I phoned Fergie and she told me, tomorrow morning, before we go for the Blackburn game, come home, We have breakfast together, and then we go to the ground to Old Trafford together. So I went there, we had champagne breakfast with him, and I came with his car, in his car to Old Trafford. And as soon as we arrived over here at Old Trafford, we were surrounded by whoever was outside the ground. And in a way, Fergie could barely walk. So I had to be on the side or at the back of him trying to separate the crowd. And it turned out that it was covered by most TV stations in UK. And every time it's on, everyone tells me, I saw you behind Fergie. It was a great thing, you know, because even at that time, which was the first time we won the Premiership, Fergie organized a sort of a party for his family and his very close friends. And he had a party for us all in the dressing room. And you must ask, but how did he organize the party, the drinks and everything? So we used the big aluminum containers, which they used the kits, where they used to get all the jerseys and shorts of the players when going away, you know. And on that occasion, with us in the dressing room, I remember well, was even Mike Hacknell, at that time, a big United supporter. And this sort of ritual of having the party, it was a good idea, because every time he won the Premiership, and the last game was at Old Trafford, we always had the party. It was really a great experience to be there, you know.
It's probably as good as it gets, apart from being in the team. You're very much celebrating with the heroes, with the players, and with the manager.
One time, when Matt was 8 years of age, the Association of Former Players organized a big dinner at Old Trafford for him. I came for the occasion, and when I looked at the menu, at the back he had all the players which played under MUSC Busby. But among them, I don't know how, my name finished with finished on the list of players who played during the Busby era, you know. And to see, it's something unbelievable, you know. The menus I've got, one of them is signed by all the players who played in the Cup final in '48, and then a copy of the menu signed by all the players who were still alive at that time, who played in the European Cup final in 60 years. There are two items which I really treasure.
Absolutely fantastic. I think any fans listening to this will probably can't even believe how much access you've had with the team, and it's not surprising that some of the players thought you were a player, because you were like a player, weren't you? You were very much part of the team.
The thing is this, that for me, when I look back, when you are in it and involved, you don't appreciate how much lucky you are. And then, when you're out of the scene, which today I'm out of the scene, then you appreciate how lucky you were.
You've obviously seen so many great games here at Old Trafford. Have you got any particular favourites?
Yes, of course. There were both negative and positive occasions. For instance, negative-wise, I had two particular games. One of them was the semi-final against Milan in '69, where I can confirm that the referee was bent. I repeat again, he was bent, because Dennis scored a goal which was nearly a foot inside the line, and the referee never gave it. And that was a big injustice. And in the final, Milan then played Ajax, and Ajax were at the very beginning of their experience in Europe. In fact, Milan beat them, so if United to qualify, they would definitely have won. Another occasion, which I always remember, I was decorating one of the rooms of the house that I was going to be in when I got married. And it was the last game when Dennis Law, unfortunately, backfield the ball. He never wanted to score. and he got us into the second division. And Dennis still tells me he never wanted to score that goal, you know. There were two of the most negative aspects of games where I was involved. On the positive side, as regards the best game I saw at Old Trafford, especially the atmosphere, was when we played Barcelona. It was the greatest game I saw Robbo played. And in fact, at the end, there was a pitch invasion, and Robbo was carried shoulder high up to the dressing room. That day, Robbo showed what a great player he was. I mean, and it's recorded that the atmosphere in the ground on that day, it was something special. I was lucky that next to me, there was the daughter of Freddie Frost, I think. He was very in at Old Trafford. And at the end, I don't know how, she opened this bottle of champagne, and I was drinking champagne in the stand with them. How she got the bottle in, don't ask me. But then there were positive occasions, even as regards goals scored. I mean, forgetting the era of Charlton, Law and Best, where we saw some fantastic goals. I think the best goal I saw was the semi-final, again against Barcelona, the special goal that Scholzi scored, which got us on to Russia to win the Champions League. I mean, they were most of the most significant occasions watching United play.
What's amazing about all those memories is, I know Dennis Law's a very close personal friend, Brian Robson obviously a good personal friend, and Paul Scholes, and it probably makes it extra special for you as well when you know them so well.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, the way I see it is that generally supporters, when they watch their players, they think they are something special. And they are special in a way because of their talent on the pitch. But when you come to know them personally, they are people like us. People with the same problems you find, even normal people. When you meet players, at the end, I mean, they are people like us. Because even the way they live, for instance, I used to go to Raymond van der Gouw at home. And we used to finish in the bath washing his children when they were young. That's the same way of life that you got, you know.
I mean, Dennis has got a big family, hasn't he? 5 kids. And I know he might pick you up on that one where you said he relegated United, because he always says he didn't he?
In a way, he's right. But that was part, because there were other reasons, point-wise, I mean.
It was almost symbolic that he relegated United, but he didn't actually technically.
Yes. But it wasn't really his fault. It wasn't that particular goal that put us down, but it was a good proportion of the reason why we went down.
I think if I'm right in remembering, didn't he end up in United's dressing room after the game? I'm pretty sure he walked straight off the pitch and straight into the home dressing room. He doesn't like talking about it, I know.
When I remember Dennis, he's unfortunately now it is in this situation, but he's a very, very, very bubbly person. Very witty with his comments. I mean, and sometimes he makes you really laugh about it, you know. It's a pity, like every one of us, when you get to a certain age, I mean, life is life.
I think it really underlines what influence you have here, Joseph, that not only do you know everybody, but you get special permissions. I think when we won the league, 92, 93, didn't you get a special dispensation to put a banner up?
It isn't that I was, in a sort of way, getting preferential treatment. And it never crossed my mind, you know. It was more friendship. But that particular occasion, we had this big banner that we took over to Rotterdam for the Cup Winners' Cup final, Fergie's Army from Malta, which was a huge banner. And I know how, talking to the secretary at that time, Ken Merritt, I came up with the idea, how can we hang it outside Old Trafford? And I said, I'll ask, but I know what the answer would be. And as soon as I told Ken Merritt, he told me, no problem. And I said, oh. and this big massive flag finished up on top of the stand as soon as you approach Old Trafford. Don't tell me how Ken finished after that, because I know there were a bit of complaints of other supporters clubs that they asked why it was them and not us. And the simple answer of Ken Merritt, he told them, the history of that club in Malta is something special for us.
That's a beautiful story. It's an iconic photograph. Did Fergie ever tell you what he thought about that banner?
He saw it in Rotterdam in the Cup Winners' Cup final, and he always referred to it with us, you know. What happened to that banner?
Fantastic. I know you've got an amazing collection of memorabilia of your own, and one of the things that you've done for many, many years is collect match programmes. How did that all start?
When I came the first time, and I used to stay with Joe Pullen, his wife had a dry cleaning business. And after visiting Old Trafford, I used to go to her place. And on the way home, we used to stop and get the groceries. And she, Doreen, who was Joe's wife, she always was telling them, he comes from Malta, I came because of it and whatnot. And just after I was there for nearly a month and a half, the bloke in charge of this grocery place, he told me, listen, can I show you something? I told him, okay. And he opened this drawer, and there were all these United reviews going back to about 49, 50. And he told me, do you want them? And I told him, of course I did. And that's how I began my collection, through that. It's something that, and it did not cost me 1 penny. He just gave it to me, you know.
Amazing.
I mean, it was an occasion, at that time I did not realize, but it was an occasion that couldn't be missed. For instance, yesterday, Alan Keegan was telling me that one program, a special program, last week was sold for 10 grand.
That was the game after Munich, wasn't it?
Exactly, the Wolves game. Which is something that they're items which you do treasure. But that was the way how I began my collection.
So you had a good start there with your collection, but how comprehensive is the collection? I'm pretty sure you've got most of the programmes since those days.
My collection begins from really 44, 45. Home and away, which goes up to this to the last week we play now, and including friendlies, home and away, which are very hard to find. I am missing about 100.
Crikey.
So when you consider all the seasons, when there are also friendlies away for competitive games, that's not a bad start. There are other people who's got big collections. I mean, if I mention the name of Les Millman, and another bloke who unfortunately lost his life recently, Ray Edler, I feel that they are the two supporters that got the best connections, United collections in the world.
Absolutely. Is it still an ambition to get those missing 100 programmes or so?
I think today, at my age, and the prices being asked for them sort of programs, it's not a case of how much you're ready to pay them sort of money. The bigger problem is where to find them, because I think it's very near impossible, you know.
You mentioned the Association of Former Players earlier, and you were obviously around when it first started. I think it was 85, 86 sort of time.
Yes. And not the first time, when Harry McShane was still alive, the father of Ian McShane. Alan Gowling was already there, and sometimes we used to go to the pub where they used to have the meetings and finish up the meeting having drinks with them over there. So for me, they have always been great people, and even the association, it served to me as a breeding ground of meeting a lot of ex-players. And I think they did a good job, because they they collected thousands and thousands of pounds for charity, including a charity in Malta one time.
Fantastic.
It is very hard to accept that these days, most of them, of the people who run it, they're people of a certain age. And I feel sad to say that there is a possibility that unless new blood is introduced, this great association is bound to face big problems of extinction or not, you know. I mean, but they've been a really stepping stone for me to come and know so many people in these circles of Old Trafford. And they've also been, especially Alan Walden and Jimmy Eames, there's also been a great help for the benefit of our local supporters club in Malta.
Everything that you've told us, Joseph, it's so important that these memories are shared, and I'm really grateful, I think everybody is, that you're sharing these stories, and you've got so much to contribute to the history. You are part of the history of Manchester United Football Club. I'm just wondering, we're looking out at the stadium there, how do you feel about how it's evolved?
To be honest, it's all a question of trust and friendship. I mean, Old Trafford, most probably the people within the Old Trafford circle, people who are employed, people who are in important positions as directors, the club secretary and whatnot, you know, they must meet at least 2,000 persons a day who have got some connection supporters. So you can imagine to try and find somebody whom you trust, because let's face it, a lot of people, they come there to try and gain something out of it, you know. So it's all a question of trust. It's what I call, you have to pass through the mill. I mean, and I think I've been through that mill hundreds of times, and I managed to pass through it.
I've got to say, you've been through that mill quite a few times, Joseph, and I don't think anybody on the planet would know more about Manchester United Football Club than you. You've been part of it, you've lived it. It's absolutely fascinating to hear all your stories. Another question I'd like to ask you, because we're getting close to the end now, is we're looking out at the stadium, and to everybody around the world, it's still very much an iconic stadium, but we all know it needs a little bit of a facelift or a redevelopment. What's your own personal view? Would you like to see it upgraded, or would you like to see it being rebuilt?
No, the situation, you have to go with the time. I mean, lately, I don't know if you saw the new stadium in Spain of Real Madrid, the Bernabeu. It's a fantastic stadium. I haven't been yet, but everybody says the fantastic stadium Tottenham got in London. If these people have this sort of stadium, a massive upgrade, why should not United do the same thing? You need money, you need a lot of investment, but you have to go through the time. And I think the club, with the history, deserve a better stadium.
Absolutely. I mean, you've seen a lot, Joseph. I mean, I don't know how long you've got left. Hopefully you're going to live for another few decades. But what would you like to see happen at Manchester? Have you got any ambitions for the football club before you're not here anymore?
No, the thing is this, the ambitions, I don't think they are really only my personal ambitions, you know. But I think everybody who supports Manchester United, they've got this mentality which might be misunderstood, because they are Man United and they've won so many honours, especially in the era of Fergie. They think it is our right to be there. And in fact, these days, a lot of the supporters who were involved in the Fergie area, which are of a certain age, very small, much less than me, they think that we should be where Fergie brought us, you know. And sometimes in football it doesn't work that way. First of all, I personally think that there's no way the way football today is what Fergie achieved will be repeated. With all due respect to Fergie, I think he would agree with me that the way football is run, even managers these days, there's no way you'll find a manager who stayed as long as Fergie did. The football is not run that way these days. So to win what Fergie won at Man United, for me, it's impossible to be repeated. But the mentality of the people, and especially of supporters of a certain age, still think it's our right to be there. Although we wishes, there are other teams who today are competing with us, like the noisy neighbors around the corner, you know, and they have the right. You've got a lot of investment coming from Arab countries, which today they are very competitive. I hope that the new person who's taking over here, I've got a feeling that he will definitely see a big improvement in the running of the club, especially on the football pitch, as regards investments in players and whatnot. And I hope he will succeed, like everybody, us all, hope so.
I love the optimism, Joe, and I'd like to thank you and everybody from Malta who've supported this football club. And we've got another couple of episodes. The next 2 episodes are going to film in Malta, but I think every football fan who supports Manchester United should listen to your wisdom and your memories, because I think a lot of people could learn a lot from Joe Glanville. But Joe Glanville, thank you very much for this latest episode.
Thank you, and it's been a great opportunity, which I will treasure for long. Thank you very much.
There's a lot more fascinating insight still to come in this series, and our next 2 episodes are both filmed in Malta. In part 3 we filmed Joe at his home, where he has a unique collection of Manchester United memorabilia. If you've not done so already, please subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell to make sure you don't miss our next episode.